There is a vast monster of a man with a hideous grin torn across the mask that keeps stalking my every move. Similar to a hunter, he tracks us, priming devastating traps amongst the greenery. Extreme vigilance and a light step is essential in avoiding the blood-curdling clinch of a bear trap or the clutches of what I've taken to calling the miserable smiling killer. I have but many times managed to get caught in one of these traps. I have nothing but a fear for the feeling of blunt trap spikes grinding against my bones, or for the heavy and deliberate footsteps, which always inevitably reveal a plastered, sadistic grin. With the traps and the trapper, it has so far been a constant battle between looking up and looking down. Benedict Baker's Journal, 1896. Welcome, my friends, to the realm of the entity. This is a world of chaos, death, and most of all, terror. The most terrifying and vicious killers haunt this fog, and it all starts with this man, a man hidden by a grotesque, toothy grin. With a cleaver in hand, overalls to cover his tough hide, and a nefarious trap in his hand and on his mind, the Trapper was the first and most iconic killer to make his presence known in the realm of the entity. But who is the Trapper? It's hard to know exactly what time period he was originally from, but based on the information we know from his biography, we can roughly guess that the Trapper lived in the late 19th century to the early 20th century. We can also assume he grew up somewhere in the northern part of the United States. His real name was Evan MacMillan, the son of Archie MacMillan, a very prosperous and wealthy mining tycoon who ran their family estate like a dictator. His employees who worked the mine were treated poorly and like slaves. Archie MacMillan didn't believe in empathy, compassion, or kindness. These were weaknesses, and they only allowed others to take advantage of you. There was no room for love in the MacMillan household, not even for his son Evan. Evan never quite understood the hate his father seemed to have for his workers. The abusiveness and the cruelty surrounded him constantly. His mother had supposedly drowned in a lake, and his uncle had been killed by a grizzly bear. There was only his father. Evan tried to make friends, but all in vain. He loved to draw and sketch, but his father would shred his work if he found it. Evan grew up defiantly resenting his father, and yet, at the same time, there was something about the man that he couldn't deny. The power his father had was extraordinary. The power to take what he wanted, the power to put down who he liked. Evan began to idolize and yet hate his father. And as time marched on, Evan's father became sick. His mental health was deteriorating. Evan would become his loyal enforcer. Whether it was out of that admiration or out of fear of him, Evan did anything he was asked. With his father in such a weak state, the workers began talking about calling in the unions, perhaps to seize control of the mining operation. To Archie, this would be taking away his livelihood, his whole life, everything he worked for. Evan couldn't allow that. In what would go down as the largest mass murder in recent memory, Evan lured all the workers into the mine and then detonated the entrance with dynamite, killing everyone inside. After all, compassion was for the weak. Those with power take what they want, just like how Evan's father took his mother from him by drowning her, like how Evan's father left his uncle to be eaten by a bear. The compassionate do not belong in Archie MacMillan's world, and so Evan had to be ruthless like his father, vicious like his father, cold like his father. So much so that when the police discovered Archie MacMillan's body, they found it tied up and locked in the family basement, starved to death. Because Evan had become stronger than his father, and the entity was impressed. Putting on a frightening, grinning mask of his own design and taking up the bear traps with which his father would go and hunt grizzlies, Evan willfully walked through the fog to assert his power over others, to show everyone that he would not be weak. The Trapper was powerful. Now, the Trapper's backstory is fine, and I think there's a lot we can take from it from a psychological and historical perspective. There's a nugget of truth behind it. In the blood, brass, and grit tome, we learn that the Trapper's father believed that proper wages, in the ideals of unions, is all socialist crap. This gives us a time frame from when the Trapper probably lived. Coal mining was a big business in the late 19th century, and this would also be a time period when socialistic ideals of unionization would be cropping up. Because his father hunts grizzlies, we can safely put the location in the north central or northwestern United States, Probably someplace like Montana or Wyoming, where coal mining was a booming business. I particularly like the aspect of his character that deals with his father and his relationship to him. Sons often want to be like their fathers, and a strong father figure is a good thing for a child. They provide stability and a model for what a man should be. But when the father figure is abusive, controlling, and cruel, this is what the child will learn to model. Evan must have had some degree of compassion shown to him before, likely from his mother, who, as stated before, died from it. Any sense of kindness, therefore, was beaten out of it, and I do think it's quite a twisted irony that he turns that hatred on his father. He idolizes his father but hates him at the same time. It's such a contrasting way of looking at someone, and I do feel it's somewhat relatable. I think it's very possible to find someone in any of our lives that we look up to for their accomplishments and for their strengths, but also resent them for how they achieved it, or for how they treat us from where they are. Like the character himself, Trapper is pretty straightforward. He seeks to dominate others and to assert his power over them, because kindness is a weakness. Compassion leaves holes to exploit. Only the vicious can stand, and it's that depravity that allows a trapper to be so ruthless. He leaves traps for people to fall into because it shows their weakness, their inability to see what lies ahead. Trapper's power is very basic to understand. When the trial begins, there are bear traps littered all over the map, and the trapper can go around and open them or pick them up and move them to new locations. If a survivor steps on one of these traps, they let out a scream that informs the trapper where they are, and they are held in place by the bear trap until either the trapper hits them, another survivor frees them, or they free themselves through an animation. The weakness of the traps is that they are visible, and careful survivors can find them and avoid them or deactivate them. However, deactivating them does give the trapper an auditory warning as to where they are. My favorite strategy with the trapper is to take things slow. I set traps in key looping points like in pallet spots or in tight areas where the survivors will run to and try to slip away from me. I'll also put them in tall grass where they aren't as easy to see. This way, when the chase starts, the survivors might make a run for the pallet, only to get caught in my trap. Other times it will know the trap is there and take another route to avoid it, allowing me to catch up. But be warned, you can get caught in your own trap, which kinda sucks. Like all killers, Trapper has 3 unique perks. Unnerving Presence, which increases the likelihood of skill checks while the survivor is in your terror radius, and this is a great perk as it applies pressure to survivors, and when they sense you coming, they're more likely to make mistakes anyway, causing the generator to burst and thus a good auditory signal on where I need to go. Brutal Strength, which is my personal favorite, lets you break through walls, pallets, and generators faster, a great way to keep the chase going. This perk lets me regress a generator quickly and get right back to the chase, or shatter a pallet fast and keep the survivor from getting too much distance. And finally, Agitation, which a lot of people love, but I tend not to use it. It allows you to move a bit faster while carrying a survivor to the meat hook, which can come in handy. It also increases your terror radius if you're walking by, because if a survivor's working on a generator and you have Unnerving Presence active as well, it can force them to get a skill check or two, which could inform you of where they're working or hiding after you hook someone. For my perks on Trapper, I run Brutal Strength and Unnerving Presence for their ability to help with the chase and pressuring survivors, but I also run Nurse's Calling, which is very helpful for me if a survivor escapes a bear trap before I can get to them. I'll be able to notice them healing or being healed as I close in. I also run Rancor because it works well to allow me to seek out which generators to go towards or where to set traps as they make their escapes. Trapper is all about map control and pressure in the chase. He's an easy killer to get the hang of and an easily recognizable icon and staple of the game. If you're new to the game, Trapper is an excellent killer to start with. His bio is realistic and relatable, his super move is simplistic and easy to get the hang of, and his perks allow him to keep hook, chase, and pressure all survivors in almost every circumstance. Be careful as you wander the fog, and look out for yourself, because those who stop to help others, those who show compassion and kindness, those are the weak, meant to be trapped and killed by the strong.
Someone says you disguise yourself like a chameleon, just say, your mom. That usually shuts them up.
Oh, hello there!
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Nothing bad ever.
Hello there.
You serious?